This is Your Anxiety Toolkit, episode number 132. Welcome to Your Anxiety Toolkit. I'm your host, Kimberly Quinlan. This podcast is fueled by three main goals. The first goal is to provide you with some extra tools to help you manage your anxiety. Second goal, to inspire you. Anxiety doesn't get to decide how you live your life. And number three, and I leave the best for last, is to provide you with one big, fat virtual hug. Because experiencing anxiety ain't easy. If that sounds good to you, let's go. Welcome back, everybody, to the Your Anxiety Toolkit podcast. I am so thrilled to have you here with me today. It is a beautiful winter day here in California. It does not feel like winter here, which I'm thoroughly enjoying. Today is going to be so exciting. I cannot wait to share with you the most rich, beautiful interview. You guys, this one just brings me so much joy. So let me give you a little bit of the backstory. When I was a kid, my parents would allow me, because I was the youngest, to watch one 30-minute show per week. Now, we got to choose that show, and I would always choose the show Full House. I loved Full House. I loved the people. I loved the family. I loved the location. I just loved everything about it. And I just loved how silly and fun it was. And during that time, one of the characters I most resonated with was Kimmy Gibbler. I loved Kimmy Gibbler. Not because I was that much like her. In fact, I wasn't much like her at all. It's more that I wished I was like her. I think we all wished we were a little bit more like Kimmy Gibbler. Now, fast forward to now, we have Fuller House, which is sort of the updated, grown-up version of Full House. And more than ever, someone I aspire to be is the adult version of Kimmy Gibbler. Oh my gosh, you guys. She is confident and she embraces herself and she is funny and she loves her body and she loves her job and she loves her children and she's very passionate, and I love Kimmy Gibbler. But interestingly, after doing this interview, more than I want to be Kimmy Gibbler, I actually want to be more like Andrea Barber, who is the face of Kimmy Gibbler. And today I'm so excited to share with you this beautiful interview with Andrea Barber. She plays the role of Kimmy Gibbler. And she just, oh my gosh, you guys, she is so real. We talk about mental health and we get deep into the depths and the pain of that, talking about loss and grief and depression and severe anxiety and panic. So I really, really hope you get a lot from this. I found it incredibly authentic and touching. And so I can't wait to share that with you. But before we do, I just want to do a couple of housekeeping pieces. Okay, number one, in May of this year, 2020, oh my goodness, I'm so excited. I will be the therapist alongside Stuart Ralph, who is running the OCD camp. Now, the OCD camp is a camp ran in the UK. It is for UK residents only at this point. And we go camping and we talk about OCD and we support each other and we do fun activities and we look at, the treatment and the recovery and the ups and the downs. And I'm so excited to be there for that event. If you are interested and you live in the UK, you can go to theocdcamp.com. Applications close on January 19th. And Stuart will be doing some short interviews after that just to make sure everyone's a really good fit. And you guys, I just cannot wait for that event. Last piece of housekeeping is we have to do the I Did a Hard Thing segment. Last week, I did the hard thing, which was talking about a topic that was really kind of uncomfortable for me. So go back and check that out if you want. But today's I Did a Hard Thing comes from Ethan Smith. Ethan has been on the podcast before. He's an amazing human being, an amazing OCD advocate. So I'm so excited. Okay, here he says, A few hours into my first cruise in 25 years, the captain announced that there would be 40-mile-per-hour winds and 20-foot seas for the next 24 hours. Wowzers. The movement and sensation began mimicking a panic attack. And oh, how my head used to feel when the OCD was at worst, right? So at its worst. But then I realized I could not get off this boat. You guys know that feeling, right? When you finally realize that you're kind of stuck in a place. And he says, Q, and this is in capitals, every symptom I've ever had, right? So he's been triggered, obviously. Fortunately, days 2 through 7 were amazing. And he said, we have to stick with it. So amazing, amazing thing. What you can hear him saying here is totally triggered, total reverse on things that you used to feel, but he stuck with it and it sounds like he had an amazing time. So thank you, Ethan, for sharing with me that amazing, amazing story. He did hashtag at the bottom. I won't lie. He did hashtag great day to do hard things. Hashtag thought about swimming ashore. Then he said, hashtag seriously, that was a logical option. So there you have it. I think that is probably as realistic as it comes. Okay, guys, let's get into this incredible interview. Thank you, Andrea Barber, for being on. Really, really, I'm honored to have you on the show. And I just know you guys are going to love it. So I'll leave it on over to the interview. Have a great day. Well, I am so excited to have Andrea Barber here today. This is a really special day for me because I am actually a huge fan of yours as well. So thank you for coming on.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. I'm so excited to chat with you today.
Yeah, I was a Kimmy Gibbler fan, but I'm actually more of an Andrea Barber fan now.
Oh, that's exactly what I was hoping for when I was writing my book, is that people would get to know me and, know the person behind Kimmy Gibbler and know just more about me and my life and who I am, which is very different than Kimmy Gibbler.
Right. And you really got to that right away in the book, which was sort of saying like, I really want people to know the Andrea, like just to be Andrea, right? So can you tell us a little bit about your intention with the book and what you wanted to achieve?
Sure. Well, I really wanted to share this huge part of me, not just my life story, but my, this huge journey I went through during my 20-year break from Hollywood. I quit Hollywood when I was 18 and I had never planned to return. So there's this big 20-year gap where people are like, where did Kimmy Gibbler go? Like she just disappeared off the face of the planet. And I'm like, well, no, I didn't. I actually accomplished a lot and went through some pretty significant experiences. I just didn't do it in public. I didn't do it on camera or in Hollywood. So people don't really know what happened. And a large part of my job now as an actress is doing media interviews, but it's all just sound bites. It's like a 3-minute, segment here or a 5-minute segment there. And that's really not enough time for people to get to know me. And especially, it's not a good way to get to know me in a way that I'm comfortable with, because as I say in the book, I've never been comfortable with the spotlight or being a celebrity in the traditional sense of somebody who loves being in front of cameras and red carpets and strobing flashlights. That's just not something I've ever really been comfortable with. So I wanted to share myself and my journey in a way that I was comfortable, and that was through writing, because I have been a writer at heart ever since I was a little girl, writing stories. In my mom and dad's house, I would make little books out of construction paper and cardboard and tape them together with Scotch tape. And then I went to college and majored in English literature, and I got a master's degree. So I've been writing my entire life. I've just never actually been a published writer until now. So I set out to write this book, and gosh, it felt so great to just pour these feelings and pour my story out through my fingertips and onto the keyboard, and just kind of look back at my life and put it all together into, a 300-page book. It just felt great to finally get that out on paper and be able to share it with people in a way that I really wanted to. And so I'm really proud of it. And I'm really excited for people to get to know me in this way.
It's a fun read. It really is. Even though you're
Oh,
talking about some in parts of it, really, really difficult time in your
mhm.
life, it's a really fun read. I love the way that
Oh,
you kind of like shared even times like when you were writing. I know I want to talk with you about a couple of the main points that I really resonated with, but even
mhm.
sharing like exactly what was going on in the world at that time when you wrote it around suicide and mental health
Right.
issues. Yeah. So share with us about your mental health journey or your mental wellness journey, like whatever you want to call that,
Sure.
mental illness journey. What would you call it? And share with us a little bit about that really great story you told in the book.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, I guess I would prefer to call it mental health journey because it is focused on health and healthiness. And while it is a mental illness, that word still carries a lot of stigma about it. And I'm like, well, it's about getting better, and finding healthy ways to cope. So we'll call it my mental health journey. And I guess it's been a part of my entire life. I just didn't know. I didn't know I had anxiety until I was in my 20s and 30s because I didn't know it was a thing and it had a name and it had a diagnosis. I had no clue. But my earliest memories of being a child actor on these Hollywood sets, I was on a soap opera when I was starting at age 6. On my 6th birthday, I started on a soap opera called Days of Our Lives. And then I started Full House when I was 10. And from my earliest memories, I remember waking up and throwing up in the morning because I was nervous, or throwing up before performances or big scenes that I was particularly nervous about. And then I remember just always being kind of on edge and nervous and biting my nails. I've been biting my nails for 43 years, my entire life, and just having this general sense of uneasiness. And I just thought, well, I guess that's normal. I didn't know any other way of life. That was all I ever knew. And so I just sort of lived with it, and it was fine. It was never a problem as a child. It was just something I went through. And then when I got into my 20s and I got married and I moved abroad to do my master's degree in York, England, that's when it really started to get worse, to the point that I was like, something's not right. This is becoming not just what I thought was a personality trait. I think there's something wrong with me. And that's when the throwing up in the morning became a lot worse. I would lose a lot of weight when I would go through these anxiety attacks chronically. Like every morning I would wake up, at 3 or 4 in the morning and just dry heave into the toilet for an hour before I could kind of get control of it and move on with my day. So I remember going through this, when I was planning my wedding, and I thought, well, I'm just a nervous bride. Like all brides are nervous. So this is just situational and it will pass. And then when I was getting a master's degree in England, I thought, well, this is just a stressful time because I'm getting a master's degree. So this is situational and it will pass. And then when I had my first child, again, I was like, I'm just a nervous mother. This will pass. And then I had my second child, Felicity. And it was several months actually after she was born that the cycle started and continued again with the throwing up and the not sleeping. And then I eventually stopped eating, and I lost a dramatic amount of weight in a short period of time, where I was actually under 100 pounds for a while. And I couldn't eat anything. And eventually I couldn't get out of bed or stop dry heaving. So that was like my crisis point. That's when I was like, whoa, like this is taking over my life and my brain, and I can't take care of myself and I can't take care of my children. And my husband at the time, he had no education about mental illness or anxiety or depression. He was just as lost as I was. So he didn't know how to help me. And he had just started a new job at a new law firm. So he was sort of stressed, trying to juggle a brand new job as a big lawyer, at a big law firm, and all of those billable hours. And then having this wife who was very, very sick at home. So I say in the book how I called my parents at 5 o'clock one morning, and I was just like, I can't move. Like I don't know how I'm going to get through the next minute, much less the next day or week or month. And I literally can't think past 60 seconds from now. I need your help. And so my parents drove over. they packed up me and the kids and they took me to their house to mostly just take care of the kids at first while I just sat in bed and tried to think, well, maybe this is a flu. I didn't know what it was. Like, I kept searching for like, well, maybe I just have the flu and it will go away. And obviously it wasn't going away. So eventually they packed up the four of us, with my husband too. And we all moved into my parents' house for about a month so that they could nurse me back to health and take care of my kids at the same time. And I mean, it was like becoming a baby or a toddler again for me. They would, food in front of me and they said, you have to eat this. And I said, I don't want to, and I'm not hungry. And they said, you have to eat. Like, this is part of getting better, is you have to eat. And they would take me on daily walks and I would be angry. And I'm like, why are you making me do this? Like, this isn't going to help. I'm always going to feel this way. I don't see a way out, and I don't see how going for a walk is going to make me feel better. But they said, you got to do it anyways. We're going to force you to eat. We're going to force you to go for these walks. We're going to force you to get up and take a shower. I mean, it seems like such basic things, like these basic human needs, but I wasn't functioning. Like, I couldn't do any of those. So that was my lowest point. And I'm sure we'll talk more about, there were several things I needed in order to get better. And this was just the beginning point, was asking for help from my parents, who were very supportive. We still get emotional when we talk about it, like what they did for me. Like, they just put their lives on hold to take care of me and my family and get me back to a healthy place. So yeah, that was the beginning. That was a very long beginning to my mental health journey. And, I discovered it's been long. It's been a 12-year journey now since that point. My daughter is now 12 years old. And so it's been 12 years of me learning how to live with anxiety and how to manage these attacks, and learning what tools I need in my toolkit in order to get better. And it's a lot of things. And I'm sure we'll talk about that later, about talk therapy and medication and meditation and exercise. It's been a lot of things that I've learned over 12 years.
Right. Right. And I love, because you really detail those in the book, which it's great. It's sort of nice. It's like a little bit of a help for those who are maybe in that same position. What I found was really interesting was your disbelief that it was a problem, which I think is so common for people when they're struggling with anxiety, to sort of put it aside and say, well, it's just temporary, or this is just a part of my personality. What was that like for you to sort of come to a place of recognizing that there might be a problem?
Well, it was mixed emotions. And it wasn't until I started seeing a therapist that I could kind of put it into words. And it took me a while to find a therapist that I clicked with too. I think a lot of people give up on therapy because they try it once or twice and it's not working. And I'm like, well, you got to keep looking, and the therapist that I ended up with eventually, she's great. I love her so much. And I've been with her for 12 years now, and I still see her. I just saw her last week. She's the best, and we click so well. And she's really helped me learn more about this illness too. So to answer your question, it was mixed emotions, because a part of me was relieved that it had a name and it had a diagnosis, because I'm like, well, then there must be not a cure, but there must be a way to manage it. There must be a treatment for it. So in that sense, I felt relieved, but I also felt not ashamed, but I just felt like something was wrong with me. I just thought, well, this is not a personality trait. It's an illness, and I hate it, and I wish I didn't have it. And I felt like the only person that had it. I mean, I know there's other people out there that have anxiety, but nobody close to me ever really talked about it. So I felt very isolated and alone. Even though I had this great support system with my husband and my parents, I still felt very alone in how I was feeling, because my anxious thoughts and those spiraling thoughts just consumed my brain, and I couldn't, it's like running on a hamster wheel. You can't stop those feelings once they start, or you can't stop those thoughts once they start. And so I just felt very isolated and alone and unable to escape my own brain. So, well, I can't remember your original question now, but yeah, so it was mixed emotions when I finally realized that what I had was generalized anxiety disorder. Yeah, mixed emotions. And those emotions have evolved over the last decade.
Right.
No, you answered that perfectly.
Sometimes I start rambling and I'm like, what was the
No,
original question?
no, actually, that was one of my questions about the feeling alone. Because I think, when I read the book, I could feel the love and support that you were given. But I think it's so true that no matter how much love and support you get, it's such an isolating experience to be in anxiety, or depression and feel like, even someone who has anxiety and depression, it doesn't even feel like they get you. So I totally can resonate with that. I really valued how you brought this conversation around how your anxiety shows up in your tummy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is a topic that I haven't spoken about a lot, but I love it because I think it's so important. Can you explain what you mean by that? Because I think a lot of people will resonate.
Sure. I learned all of this from my therapist who explained it all, how it's like in a matter of like 5 minutes, it all just clicked. I was like, oh, that's why I am the way I am. And she explained that I carry my anxiety in my stomach. And when I start that spiral of anxious thoughts and worries and stress, my body starts overproducing adrenaline. And that goes straight to my stomach. I mean, I'm not speaking in medical terms, but just sort of, this is how it kind of works. The adrenaline kind of resides in my stomach and it starts producing stomach acid. And then it just stays there and like marinates into this, awful bubble of anxiety. And that's why I would throw up or dry heave every day. And that's just, and even to this day, when I get stressed or anxious, I'll feel it. I feel it in my stomach. Like I'll get nauseous and I'll feel just this grumbling, like this literal grumbling in my stomach. And that's just how my anxiety manifests itself. And I never knew that that's how anxiety could present itself. I guess I didn't know, I never really thought about it before, but yeah, that it makes sense now. When I'm in high periods of stress, I'll start throwing up or dry heaving. And even to this day, like as recently as a few weeks ago, I started waking up and dry heaving. And I was like, oh man, this is it. Like, this is my telltale sign that something's wrong and I need to stop and change something about what's going on. And so it was almost like I was checking myself and saying, okay, what do I need to change? Do I need to take a day off? Do I need to get more sleep? Do I need to exercise more? Or do I need to see my therapist more? What is it I need to do? Because I don't want to start the cycle of throwing up every single day and then not, and which eventually leads to not sleeping, which leads to not eating. It's that spiral and you got to catch it before it gets out of control.
Right. And you have that awareness now of like, like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, this is a sign. This is like the flag goes up and it shows up in your tummy.
Right. Exactly. That's a good analogy. It's like that red flag. As soon as it starts, I'm like, whoa, let's stop this before it gets worse.
Right. I resonate with that so much because that was exactly my experience as well. That's how I learned that I was anxious. I sometimes I wouldn't even know I was anxious. My tummy then I'd be like, okay, if my stomach's upset, something's going on,
Exactly. And it can be so subconscious too. Even this week with the Christmas stress and everything, my stomach wasn't feeling well. And I'm like, I feel jittery and I don't know why. Like I have no reason to feel anxious this week, but there must be something going on that I am not consciously aware of, but maybe subconsciously my stomach is telling me, hey, you're worried about something, or there's something going on that you need to check. So it'll happen without me even being aware of a stress that's present in my life. So I'm trying to figure that out now. I'm like, what is it? Is it Christmas? Is it my show being over? Like what is it about this that I'm sort of have this low grade anxiety happening this week?
No, I completely resonate with that entirely. I love that in two parts of the book, you talked about your relationship with taking medication. I don't feel like you need to disclose what medication or so forth, but can you share with us? What I loved is how you went in depth of weighing up the pros and cons of taking a medication, but the side effects. Can you kind of share your experience with that? Because I feel like it would be really helpful for people.
Sure. Well, it didn't start that way. It didn't start with that awareness where I was like, let me weigh the pros and cons of taking medication. When I first started medication, that's when I was at my low point of my postpartum anxiety and depression. And I was just like, I need something to get me out of this hole. So I actually spoke over the phone with my OBGYN, and he's actually the one who prescribed me my first antidepressant and anti-anxiety medication, which surprised me because I always assumed that in order to get an antidepressant or any sort of mental health medication, you have to go to a psychiatrist. And well, that might be the preferred method. I didn't know that like you could go to your general doctor, or in my case, my OB, to get this medication. But afterwards I was like, yeah, that makes sense because he's an OBGYN. He sees women all the time. He sees women going through postpartum depression all the time. So who better to recognize this than him? So he's the one that just provided me that prescription for my immediate help. And my biggest hesitation in taking the medication is because I was nursing my daughter at the time and I didn't want to stop. You know, that was a close connection I had with her. That was kind of the only connection I had with her at the time, where I was, you know, practically comatose in bed. And I didn't want to stop. So I took a visit to her pediatrician and said, well, you know, I weighed the pros and cons with the pediatrician and said, you know, how safe is this medication? You know, I don't want to stop breastfeeding. Maybe I shouldn't take this medication. And the pediatrician, you know, she looked at me and she was like, you're going through something very serious. I think you have postpartum depression. And in this case, the mother's health is more important than the baby's health. So if it means you have to stop nursing, you know, I'm in full favor of that because you need, you know, your daughter needs a healthy mother. And that's the most important thing. That's more important than breastfeeding. So I took the medication and, you know, it's not an instant fix. As you know, it takes some time to get into your system, and it's kind of weird at first because there's some side effects. It doesn't feel great. It's not a happy pill. You know, you feel kind of dizzy at times and you feel nauseous, which, you know, I was already feeling nauseous from the anxiety. And so for a few days there, it was kind of rough, but I was like, okay, I'm going to stick with it because they told me there are going to be side effects, but I need the help. So I'm going to stick with it. So I did. And you know, eventually after, I would say it was about the 2-week mark that I started feeling better in conjunction with my daily walks that my parents were making me take and eating regular meals, you know, eating 3 meals a day again. It was all of these things combined, and seeing my therapist, you know, all of that sort of started to lift that fog, that heavy black fog of depression. And it started to slow that spiraling hamster wheel. You know, everything kind of just started to slow down and feel a little bit better. I sort of think of it, the analogy I think of is like this: if you've been living in this overcast, dark day for so many days and so many months, and then suddenly you see the sun again for the first time. That's kind of how it felt for me. So I stayed on the antidepressant and anti-anxiety for about 6 months. And that's when I started to notice other side effects as well. I was feeling great emotionally, but, you know, I started to gain a lot of weight, and I gained 20 pounds, you know, all that weight that I lost, I gained back. And then I started to gain more weight on top of that. And I thought, well, this is weird because, you know, I'm not eating any differently and I'm not exercising any differently. But, you know, the pounds started to pack on, and I was like, well, that's okay because that's the trade-off for feeling happy and calm again. So I stayed on the medication, but, you know, after a couple of years, I was like, well, I don't know if do I need to be on this medication? I don't know. Like, maybe I'm okay on my own. So with the help of at this point, I was seeing a psychiatrist who would prescribe me the medication. With the help of her, you know, I tapered off of the medication to see how I would feel. And that in itself is a bit of a struggle too. It's not easy. You can't just cold turkey quit these medications. It takes a lot of time and patience and a lot of communication with my psychiatrist as well. And so I went off the medication and I felt great for, you know, 6 months to a year. But then a period of stress would hit again, or, you know, these anxiety attacks would start again, and I'd be like, oh man. So it's just been this complicated relationship with medication of, you know, do I need to be on this medication? It's not totally clear to me. And maybe now it is, but at the time I was like, for some people, it's very clear. They need to take a pill every single day. And, you know, high five to them for being proactive, and there's no judgment at all. And it's very clear cut that they have to take a pill every day. And for other people, it might not be so clear cut. There's a lot of gray area. If you just need these medications to help you get through a hard period of your life? Or do you need to take it every day for the rest of your life? A constant reevaluation for me. And I'm on an antidepressant and anti-anxiety medication right now. And I have been for a while. And I'm okay with that. That's just where I am. And I'm just going to stay on them for a while because I feel like it's helping and it's still necessary for this season of my life. I guess that's what it boils down to. You have to evaluate your life according to each season, whether it's being a new parent, the season of being a new parent, or the season of going through a divorce, or the season of my kids are older and life is easier, or the season of my kids are moving out of the house and I'm sad to be an empty nester. You just kind of have to evaluate the season of life you're in and adjust your medication needs accordingly. And the most important thing I want to stress, I know I've been talking a lot about this, but the most important thing I want to stress is whatever you're doing with medication, you can't stop doing the other non-medication activities such as exercise, eating right, meditation, seeing a therapist. Like, you can't quit doing those things just because you're taking a pill every day. It was really the combination of all of these things that helped me become healthy. And so I have to keep that in mind every day. Is that it's a lifestyle change. You have to change your entire lifestyle in order to manage your mental health.
Yeah. And you spoke a lot about that in the book, which I really love. Do you wake up in the morning and look forward to that lifestyle change, or is it still like kind of a drag? Like, you talk about how you run and you go to therapy and you meditate. Is it something now that's a part of your day, or is it sort of you're still like, oh, that's a lot of work?
No, I love it. I mean, I love it. And I always look forward to it because I know how much better I'm going to feel. Of course, I still have days where I wake up and I'm like, ugh, I don't want to run. Like, it's raining today. I don't want to get out there and be wet. I don't want to run or sometimes especially with meditation, I'm like, I don't have time. Like, I don't have time to have 10 minutes of meditation. But the most ironic thing is that if you don't have time for 10 minutes of meditation, that's when you need it the most. Right. So yeah, there's never days when I dread, running or meditation or going to therapy. I never dread going to therapy. I love it. That's one of my favorite things in life, is just a solid 50 minutes of just being able to talk about myself with somebody else who's going to listen intently and help me through whatever I'm going through. But there's a lot of days, more days than I want to admit, that I wake up and I just feel too busy to do these things. And so, yeah, there's been plenty of periods of time where I just don't run at all, or I don't meditate at all. Like, I'm not perfect. There's lots of times when I just put that on the back burner because I'm too busy with work or too busy with kids, or, my commute is very long. So I'm just like, I would rather just, watch a TV show than go for a run, or, I'd rather just, eat a piece of pie than meditate, So I am definitely, I have fallen victim to that more times than I can count. But in the back of my mind, I always know, as soon as I step foot out the door, I already feel better. And so I know that it's almost like a tug of war with my brain, where I'm like, I know I'm going to feel better if I go for a run, even though I want to just have a lazy day. I know I'm going to feel better. So there's always that daily tug of war, but it's never something I dread. It's usually just a matter of feeling like I'm too busy to fit it into the day. Of course, there's always time. You just have to find it and make the time.
Yeah, I love it. Okay. I have a quote from your book that I wanted to get your thoughts on.
Sure.
You said, "It's actually very empowering to think about, I have the power to change my life." Can you share what that's about?
Sure. I believe this is the part of the book where I was quoting a motto on a shirt that I wear. And the motto is, I run this body. And it's like a runner shirt. It's very popular amongst runners to buy this shirt and wear it. And, at first I thought it was just sort of a bragging thing, just like, I'm a runner, so, I run this body. But then I started to think about it in terms of agency, and in terms of that you having, or me having the power. It's like, wait a minute, I run this body. It's not a pill that controls this body. It's not even my therapist. My therapist helps me and gives me suggestions and advice, but it's still me. that has to make it all happen. And it's not a number on a scale that determines who I am. It's me. I run this body. I'm in control. I'm in the driver's seat. So it's very empowering to think about you having that type of power to heal yourself, because anxiety and depression, both of them, it feels so overwhelming. It feels like it controls you. For such a long time, I felt like I was out of control and these things were just happening to me. The anxiety was happening to me and I couldn't get it to stop. And the depression was happening to me and I wanted it to go away so badly. And I felt like I didn't know how to make it go away. And it was through all of my techniques, my therapy, my running, my medication, all of it, I took the power back. And now I'm in control of it. And of course, there's still days where I've high anxiety, and there's days where it's higher than I wish it would be. But in the back of my mind, I always know that, I'm in the driver's seat and I can conquer this. I just need to do the things that I've been taught to do.
I love it. I really do. Okay, I have 2 more questions. I'm sorry. I just want to get all your information out of you.
Yeah. No, this is great. Thank you so much. I love this in-depth talk. Nobody ever gives you the airtime to talk this deeply about such a personal topic. So I appreciate you asking the questions and giving me the space to talk about it.
Oh, I appreciate your openness. It's so powerful. I love these messages. And these are the big ones that I was like, I have to have these. Like I cannot. So I adored the part where you talked about suicide prevention. And the thing I love the most, and I really want you to share from your perspective, but you said, and I quote you reach out to them. Can you share your thoughts on that? Because I just was like, yes, girl, like preach it. Go ahead, tell everybody.
Right. No, I feel like this is possibly one of the most important messages in the book, because I happened to be writing this chapter at the same time it was announced that Kate Spade had died by suicide and Anthony Bourdain had died by suicide. It was just like this series of suicides that kept happening, almost one right after another. It felt like every week there was a new suicide being announced. And I was so deeply affected by that because having gone through depression myself, I was like, man, what is that tipping point between feeling terrible, but just going through the motions of every day, and then feeling so terrible that you decide you can't live with it anymore and you take your own life. So, that affected me for weeks and I just couldn't stop thinking about it. And again, this all happened the same time I was writing this particular chapter. So I thought I need to address it because once, those particular suicides went viral, everybody was talking about it. It was trending on Twitter, like everywhere, all of the news reports. There was a lot of talk about it. And so as a result, there was a lot of outpouring of support of people posting hotline numbers and saying, oh, if you're hurting, there's help. If you're feeling depressed, here's a hotline number, and there were a bunch of hashtags that were created, hashtag mental health awareness, hashtag suicide prevention day. And that's great. Like, I think all of those messages are important and these suicide hotline numbers are very important. And everybody posting about it is important too, but I think it falls short. And I think we as a community and as members of the human race need to do more than that. You can't just post a hotline number and that's just not enough, because when I think about my own personal experience and the deepest, darkest parts of my depression and anxiety, and particularly after my divorce is when I was the most depressed, I never would have called a hotline. When I think about just not ever wanting to get out of bed and not showering for days and just feeling that cloud of depression and feeling like it would never go away, if I saw people posting a hotline number and a hashtag, I never would have called it. And that's just speaking personally about me. The thought of picking up the phone alone seems impossible when you're depressed. I mean, when you're that depressed, you can't even make a phone call. I had to have my parents make that phone call for me to my OBGYN to talk about medications because I literally couldn't even pick up the phone to make a phone call. So that alone seems like a monumental task when you're that depressed. And then talking to a stranger, on a hotline. It's just, it's not something I ever would have done. And what helped me the most was when the loved ones around me noticed that something was wrong. My husband, my parents, they noticed. They were like, "What? Something's not right with you. What? Talk to us. Like, talk to us. What is going on? What are your thoughts? And how can we help you?" That's what we need to do. Like, for people who aren't depressed and who don't struggle, people need to just be aware and listen. When something feels off about one of your friends or family members, don't stay silent about it. Don't think, oh, I don't want to be a busybody. I don't want to be nosy. I'm not going to mention anything. No, speak up and say, you know what? I've noticed you've been off lately. How can I help you? Or I noticed that you've been really quiet and withdrawn. Can I take you for a walk? Can I take you out for coffee? What can I do to help? And oftentimes that depressed person won't know what they need they don't know what kind of help they need because they're convinced that they'll never get better. Like, when I was depressed, I'm like, this is never going to go away. Nothing is ever going to work. So I can't even answer that question of, what help do I need? But just someone asking the question can make a massive difference. And someone making a phone call for you can make a massive difference. And so I think, in addition to posting these hotline numbers and having these mental health awareness days and creating these hashtags, we just need to be aware and listen and speak up when something doesn't feel right with our loved ones. And that puts the onus on us. That's the onus on us. As members of the human race, we need to reach out to each other and be there for each other and support each other, because that is the only way we're going to get better.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that. It was so powerful. I was cheering you on so heavily when I read that. I loved it. So thank you. I really value that so much. Okay, last question here. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to quote you again just because I loved it. So you quoted, "The most important thing perspective has taught me, and what I want to tell anyone out there who is made to feel too broken to love, is that your illness does not define you." Can you share what was happening for you and what that meant to you?
Sure. This happened around the time of my divorce. And I know we haven't talked a whole lot about my divorce in this last hour, but when I was going through my divorce, that's when I was not only anxious, but very, very, very depressed and just feeling very unlovable, because I was separating, from my husband, this person who had promised to love me in sickness and in health. And here we were separating, and I was sick. I was depressed and I was anxious, and I was questioning, how much my anxiety and my mental illness played a part in the breakdown of my marriage. And we would have separated no matter what, but I did come to the conclusion that I think my anxiety did play a big part in the breakdown of my marriage, because it's very difficult to live with. And not everybody is equipped to live with a person with anxiety and depression. And some people are just not sensitive or not educated or not empathetic enough, and so I felt that, my divorce was in large part a result of my anxiety. And that made me feel like shit. I felt too broken to love. I was just like, well, he promised to love me in sickness and in health, and I'm too sick even for eternal vows. And it was a horrible, horrible feeling. And I just thought, well, I guess I will never find that person. Like, I'm too broken to love. I'll never be in love again. And, spoiler alert, I found love again. I have a boyfriend, Michael. We've been together for 5 years now, or almost 5 years. And he gets it. He experiences depression himself. He's been through really dark times. He's conquered a lot of his demons, and he is so empathetic. And he made me realize that I'm not too broken to love. And my illness is a part of me. It will always be a part of me, but it doesn't define me. It doesn't define me. It's not me. I'm still Andrea, at the core. And of course I'm lovable. He loves me when I'm happy, and he loves me when I'm depressed, and he loves me when I'm spiraling. And I tell him, I'm like, I know I'm spiraling, and I know I'm going through, this anxiety spiral, and I seeking a solution I can't find, and I'm stressing out about things I shouldn't. And he just says, it's okay. It's okay. I'm here for you. Let's work through this together. And I'm here, I'm here to stay. So it's just a wonderful feeling to find your tribe and to find people who get it and who understand you and are willing to love you unconditionally, no matter who you are and no matter what your diagnosis is. You're lovable through all of it. It's a very wonderful feeling to finally realize that. And I just feel like myself again. I feel like I'm Andrea, and sometimes I'm really anxious and sometimes I'm a little anxious, but I'm still me, and I'll never lose that part of me.
So good.
At least it ends with a happy ending, and I always say it's not, this isn't something I've conquered. You never conquer anxiety and depression. It's always going to be there, but it's manageable. That's the biggest takeaway, is that I have a toolkit now, and I know what tools I need to manage anxiety and depression. And I have a wonderful support system of people who are willing to help me through it. And ultimately, it's me. I have the power to change myself and to stay healthy. And it's a great feeling.
I love it so much. Thank you so much for sharing your story. For coming on the show and sharing your story, but also writing the book and sharing your story. I feel like it's so important and so helpful. Tell us about the book and tell us where we can get it and hear about you and all the things.
Sure. Okay. Well, the book is called Full Circle. It just was released 3 weeks ago, and you can find it anywhere books are sold. Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Barnes & Noble actually has autographed copies. I signed over 5,000 copies of the book. And so they're available at many local Barnes. It's available at my local Barnes & Noble. Lots of people have found it at their local Barnes & Noble. And then online, bn.com, they are stocking. It runs out of stock and then they restock it. So you just have to keep checking the website. You can get your own personal autographed copy. And I'm so proud of it. I'm so proud. It was very hard to write and very cathartic to write. And this book is my soul laid bare. And I love it. And I'm so excited to share it with people. And I'm so happy to read people's responses to it. Not just kudos, which are great, but I love hearing people that have resonated with the book and people who say, wow, this brought out something inside of me I didn't know was there. And, you made me feel less alone, and I can relate to this. I love reading people's stories because in turn that makes me feel less alone. And that makes me feel like, we are a tribe and we are one and we are here for each other and we can connect, even if it's just through Instagram direct messages. We are a tribe and we can connect, and I am here for all of you. And I'm just excited to share this story and hear all of your stories as well.
Thank you for being here. I'm so grateful to have you on the show.
I am grateful for being on the show. Thank you so much for having me.
Please note that this podcast or any other resources from cbtschool.com should not replace professional mental health care. If you feel you would benefit, please reach out to a provider in your area. Have a wonderful day, and thank you for supporting cbtschool.com.